Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. Okay, so I am excited to be here today. I am not with Dr. Kuba in the closet today, but I am with my dad in the closet today. So he came down from out of state, and I trapped him in here and said, talk. He had talk dentistry. So a lot of people don't know, but the reason I'm in the dental field is actually because of my dad. So he's a dentist, and so we're going to learn about him today, and I have clients that are asking you questions. So we're going to put you on the spot today. So, But first, tell listeners about you.
So I'm an Arkansas kid, went to Ouachita Baptist University and Henderson State University and graduated from Henderson, and then went to dental school at UT in Memphis, 1974. So yes, this is my 45th year. In June, we'll celebrate 45 years in dentistry.
And still in dentistry.
Still full-time, 4.5 days a week, and just absolutely love it.
Yeah, which is, some of our podcasts that we've been talking about recently, some of our last few episodes, it's a lot of clients of mine and a lot of friends of Dr. Kuba's struggling. They're 40, 45, and just hitting this wall of stress. I mean, COVID has been obviously very stressful. And so, I think it's interesting to sit across from somebody that's still, doing it 45 years later and doing it full time. So how have you stayed interested in it this long?
Well, I hit a wall too at probably around 20 years in. And I had always been bivocational. I had done full dentistry full-time and music ministry in churches part-time. So I had this idea that God wanted me to leave dentistry and go into full-time Christian work. So I think maybe I had that same wall that everyone hits. And so I thought, well, I'll leave it. At least I had another avenue. So I gave away my practice, literally, and sat with my wife for 4 months waiting for God's next revelation. And it came through my wife 4 months later, and she said, it wasn't God, go back to work. So I think that allowed me, I had this itch that maybe there was something else other than dentistry. So it was a terrible financial move, but it was a great emotional move. But it allowed me to realize I love dentistry.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to be happy the remaining 25 years and hopefully another 5 or 10 years.
We'll see, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
So that's interesting because in one, and I can't remember, it was a couple of episodes ago, that was actually one of my tips is for all these people that are kind of hitting the wall is to actually not sell.
Yeah, don't. Do not sell.
To wait, even if you have to close the practice down for a month or 2 months, just to reset, to recharge. And a lot of, we talked about ministry, sabbaticals are really typical in ministry.
In ministry, right.
Ministry's hard, and you hit these walls that you're like, I need, a 4-month break away from people, and the ministry is really allowed for that. The dental field hasn't.
No.
And I feel like it's so critical to have that break.
Well, it's so hard financially to figure out, okay, how can I take a break if I'm not selling my practice, but I'm disrupting my revenue stream for a little while. So that might be something that something that you can help plan.
Almost plan the play.
Yeah, plan the play financially. Yeah. So it was, it was a really good move, but a terrible financial move. So you don't make the same mistake. But it does allow you to take a fresh look at dentistry. And I think those of you that are running up against that wall, if you really evaluate everything else, there's nothing else out there like dentistry.
Yep.
Just you may think the grass is greener, but there's nothing like dentistry.
Yeah. It's such a great medical field to be in. Yeah. There really is, or can be, if we fight for it, that work-life balance that I think everybody really looks for. And financially, it's just
I don't know what you're going to do.
Exactly.
I don't know what else you're going to do,
Well, and I think that's a good perspective, too, for listeners, because there have been so many hitting this wall to just go, you know what? Talking to somebody who did, you just kind of sold, basically gave it away.
Yeah.
And then had that 4 months to reset and went, oh, okay, now I love this field again. So.
Yeah. So the thing is, just listen to your wife or husband early. If I just listened to my wife 4 months before selling it, maybe I wouldn't have.
Well, and a lot of people don't have people to push back, against them. And I think it's hard. Dr. Kuba in one of these episodes was talking about a friend that just kept kind of fizzling out and didn't really have a friend or a resource that had walked through, what you've walked through to go, hey, just wait it out, or take a break. So I think that's, a good perspective that you have.
Dentistry is so, we're so independent minded anyway. We're out there in silos all alone normally. So I think a lot of times when we hit those walls, I think like in my case, I'd already made up my mind, really, I guess, whether it was God's will or not, that I got to get out of this. So I think if you're facing that, the hard thing is to be willing to listen to somebody else. It maybe is another perspective. So just be open. Yeah. Because I wasn't.
Yeah, to make those connections and actually be willing to hear the feedback.
Like, what's really going on?
Yeah.
Is it dentistry or what else is going on in your life? Mm-hmm.
What would you say were some of the things that led you to that burnout where you're like, I got to get out? Was it staff? Was it patients? Was it just the business of it?
Well, I had a partner at the time, and people have asked me, what was that like? Because I've been a solo practitioner before and since then. And we never had really a single day of confrontation. So it was absolutely the best marriage. So that wasn't it. I don't really know. There's just, I guess always there's a challenge of staff. Mm-hmm. And we had lost some staff and fired some staff, and so that was always stressful. But there was just an unrest that I couldn't really put my finger on, so I thought it was dentistry.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It might not be dentistry that the frustration that you're having in your life, but I thought it was, till my wife told me it wasn't.
Till the bills had to be paid.
Yeah.
Food had to be on the table.
Yeah. God was not delivering manna like he did in the Old Testament, so get out and get a job.
Yeah. Go back to what you know, right? Well, and I think that's a good point, too, that even now, looking back, you can't really figure out. There wasn't anything that just kind of pushed you over the edge. It was just this feeling of being done.
It wasn't clear. It wasn't defined. It was just this feeling of, I'm tired of this, or... Yeah. Is there something else for me out there?
Yeah. And I think that's
45 years later, there's not. This is it. I love it.
Well, and and that 4-month break led you back to the field, and now again, I won't say your age, but you're old enough and you're still working full time and still loving it. So it was that 4 months, if you look at it in hindsight, was such a great investment.
Oh, yeah.
If it meant that now.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You're where you are now, still practicing.
Yeah, it gave me a new life. Really, I think it's been 25 years since I sold that original practice. So it gave me clarity and a purpose that I was okay with. And I realized that, a lot of my joy in life comes from practicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm 71.
There you go.
I'm 71 and work 4.5 days a week and absolutely, literally love getting up every day and going to work. Are there challenges? Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Those aren't going to go away, but...
I've told my patients, because at my age, I look 71 now, they're like, how much longer are you going to work? And I tell them, I just don't know, as long as I've teased with my staff. I said, as long as you're willing to change my depend diapers, I will keep working. And so far, this group has said, yeah, we'll do it.
We're with you.
We'll do that for you.
We're with you to the end, bitter end. Yeah. No, I love that. So I guess another question that I would have is tell listeners, so you sold the practice.
Yes.
Obviously, they know you're still practicing. So
Right.
what happened once you decided to go back into the field?
So then I had to find a place to work. So initially, I found a doctor that was my age that was looking for a partner. He had a partner and was looking for a partner. So we teamed up, and I worked for him as an associate for about 2 years. Absolutely loved it. Ended up doing most of his endotherapy, and so I really kind of liked that. But then at the time, again, go back to ministry, I was a music director in a small church in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, where my practice is now. And they had called me to be their music director. So I was working in North Little Rock, an hour from this town. And then on the weekends, I was leading worship. And one of the local dentists there, and this is a town I grew up in, had decided, like I did before, he was just tired of dentistry. He wasn't that old, maybe 55. And so I bought his practice. And that's how this last season of my life in dentistry has been. So I've been there in this office now 21 years.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's interesting for listeners to hear a little bit about the hurdle that you faced after you bought this practice, which it was in a location. You tell them a little bit about that story.
So I bought the practice in June, and this dentist had been in this medical facility sharing it with MDs most of his career.
Yeah.
So I thought that due diligence on my part, zero. Just assumed I would be able to. So after 6 months, the doctors came to me and said, next summer we want your practice. And I was like, what? Yeah, we want your space. And if you're not out, we will put your equipment on the pavement. And so I'm like, holy smokes. So this is a small town, not a lot going on commercially. So I assumed commercial property would be cheap because everybody would be wanting to sell it. Wrong. A few people owned all of it, so it was just a crazy price. But we bought the land. Come to find out, the owner didn't disclose to us that there was a stream buried underneath this property. So I'm thinking, I should have stayed in ministry. No. So we settled that, got the land fixed. The builder had the building just in the slab, just the concrete, and we're exactly 30 days away from the doctors saying you're going to be out. So we're like, well, what are we going to do? How long are we going to be shut down? And miraculously, that builder had me in the office in 31 days. A 3,500 square foot building.
Standalone building. Yeah. Yeah.
So for several weeks, we ran full page articles in the paper that said, they said it was impossible, but with God, all things are impossible.
Yeah.
You know? So it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was a miracle.
Well, and what a hurdle after you come off of this break to buy this practice, and you're like, now I don't have a practice. Now I've got to create this new one. But to power through in that building, and it's still where you practice.
We still get comments. We haven't changed the decor, interior or exterior decor since, and it's still
modern,
just as relevant.
Yeah. It looks great.
It's great. All the patients really love it.
Yeah, and it gave you the room to grow, which you probably didn't even think about in the office that you were in, that the one they kicked you out of. I mean, it was a tiny little space.
Oh, yeah.
You would have never been able to grow it.
No.
Again,
yeah. In hindsight, it was a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the patients like our decor so much they take off with it a lot of times. We'll ask, whatever happened to that piece? And it just
somebody
vanished.
Walked off with it.
Yeah.
It's in somebody's home somewhere. Yeah. Oh, okay, good. So I feel like that gives a good background. So now we've got some questions from a particular client that knew I was going to be interviewing today. And so she sent over some questions that she wants to pick your brain on. So we've been talking a lot about just your history. And so one of her questions is, what have you seen change over the years in dentistry, and what has stayed the same?
Okay, in 45 years of dentistry, a lot has changed. Of course, technology has changed dramatically, and I'm so glad that I have survived long enough to enjoy a lot of the new technology.
Yeah.
We scan almost everything, scan all of our preps, scan soft tissue for partials or dentures, so we're not taking impressions anymore. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one thing important, too, that's probably part of why you enjoy dentistry so much is your choice to kind of stay, kind of on that cutting edge of technology. I think there's plenty of doctors that kind of settle in, and then eventually that's boring. And so you've really stayed out ahead of it.
Trying to keep up. When I graduated from dental school, I immediately went to work for my uncle in Benton, Arkansas. And he was practicing at 75. So my goal is to beat him. And he had a stroke at 75. He was still practicing at 75. But I tell people I want to be just like him in that when we would have a state convention or some kind of educational, even in his 70s, he was still on the front row taking notes. He was a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you enjoy stuff, is just staying educated. So technology has changed a lot. I think patient expectation has changed a lot because they're so knowledgeable now, and you can find out so much information on Google or YouTube. So they come in a lot of times with having an idea of what they want, whether it be implants or so patient expectation has changed a lot.
It's kind of shifted from that doctor knows best to more I know best, and you know, you're having to kind of compete with that.
Yeah, it used to be, that they would just expect you to have all the answers. Now it's more of a collaboration.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this, what are you thinking? So when we go through a treatment plan, I'll usually give them my suggestions, and really I just leave the room and let the assistant or the front desk person
figure the rest of it out.
Because I think in my man mind, I've done a great job of telling them all about this, and I leave the room and they know nothing. So then
the real communication begins.
The women figure it out, and I just go along. I agree with you. I think that's great. So treatment options have changed a lot too. You know, it used to be amalgam and composite and extraction.
Yeah.
That's what you base your dentistry on. Your bread and butter dentistry. So I think that's one of the things that's fun too, is there's so many treatment options out there.
Right. Is that every day is interesting now. You're not having to just repeat the same
drill
exact
and fill,
thing.
Drill and fill. Techniques have changed. When I graduated from dental school, endo was a 3 1-hour appointment. 3 separate 1-hour appointments.
Really?
That was the protocol. That's what we learned in dental school. And so no wonder everyone hated root canals. My gosh.
They didn't have to go through it once, but 3 times.
In hell. How do I get out of here? So, but now with all of the new technology, new instruments, you know, a root canal is 30 minutes or an hour. So patients are more compliant. I think the employee mindset has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day when I started, I think it was an honor. I think people felt honored to work for doctors and dentists because we felt that we were more honored and revered back then.
Right.
Maybe too much so. Maybe more so in our own minds than in reality. But I think that has changed, particularly with the younger generation. Mm-hmm. They're not committed to, like one of the ladies that I work with, Melinda, we've been together for 20 years. Yeah. Wanda, one of the assistants, one of the hygienists, about 18 years. Amanda, probably 10 or, you know, so some of them you were working with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're still there.
Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah. So I think employee mindset has changed. I think those are the biggest. Yeah. What hasn't changed? People still have toothaches.
Yes.
They still have gum disease. They're still in Arkansas toothless, so it's probably true everywhere. But they still need, I see a lot of people that they still need compassion and understanding. I can't tell you how many people that come in that are just so ashamed of where they are. Mm-hmm. And we say, it's okay. Let's take it from here. But the fear's still there. I don't think as much as it used to be.
Yeah. I think, and again, I think that coincides with the technology that you
Right.
talked about, that as dentistry has become easier on the patient,
Right.
that fear has, gone down a
Right.
good bit. Not that it's ever completely away, but there's much more people that have had a good dental start and are getting to experience, being a good dental patient as an adult. So,
Yeah. With that, if we threaten them first, they really are compliant. They just behave,
just yes, sir.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Okay, good. That's great. So tell me about, this was one of the questions. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you've made as an employer, and how did you deal with that?
Not very well. I can think back, and this may persistently be a problem in my mind, in my life, but I can remember we hired, when I first began, after working for my uncle for 3 years, and he fired me. Then
we didn't get to that part.
Yeah.
That's the best part right there.
Oh, man. Then I started out by myself. So for a year, it was just me and your mom. Mm-hmm. And waiting on that 4 o'clock patient, one patient all day. We're waiting for the 4 o'clock, and then they cancel. And so anyway, we finally, after a year or two, were able to hire someone. So we hired our best friend, Linda, and it was just incredible. Yeah. She was just incredible. She was doing things we never thought about. She was actually calling hygiene patients and setting up an appointment. New concept to us, like, wow, that's pretty incredible.
So progressive.
Yeah. So I can remember, so this was 1980, 81. The first month, this was 80 and 81. The first month we ever hit 27,000 in production, and we thought,
you'd made it.
We're as big as Walmart. We are so freaking big. So I was so excited with what she was doing. She gave me, so she was it. I mean, she was the front desk. She did everything all by her little self. And she was dropping hints that she was getting tired and burned out. But I was so excited about where we were going.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, where we're going. And one day she just quit.
Yeah. And
so all of that was just gone.
Yeah.
Gone, I'm telling you.
In a day.
In a day. So that was my regret, that I was so focused on production and growing.
And the business.
And so excited. And I knew she was excited too, but I was so excited because I thought, I can make it in dentistry. I think I can do it. So I lost a wonderful employee and lost a friend.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All in, one little package there.
Yeah. So today, I find that I still think that everyone wants to work as hard as I do.
Right.
And I think they're on the same page, and I fail to realize that my compensation for my 40 hours a week is far different than their compensation for 40 hours a week. So I still have to temper that drive within me, because it's really not worth it. I mean, it wasn't worth losing a friend.
Right.
And all she needed was, I'm not sure what she needed. She just needed some help or some time off. Well, we just needed to sit down and talk about it. But I didn't really want to talk about it.
Right.
Because whatever we talked about, it was going to affect me, affect the income, whatever.
Affect the business, possibly.
But not nearly as much as her quitting.
Yeah. That was a wake-up call, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. And I feel like it's very fitting, too. One of the things that you alluded to was the workforce, the patient base has changed as patients are younger. And that workforce is also that same younger population, which is, there's nothing good, bad, or there's nothing right or wrong. It's just who they are. And there are different expectations. I think some of that work mindset, just work, is more of an old school mindset. Yeah. And so when we've got these younger workers on our team, it's hard to, like you said, temper your own. It's not that you want to slow it down. It's just you're cognizant of the fact that they're not going to be on level 10 like you are.
Yeah.
That we might have to be okay with level 5. And we get as much out of that as we possibly can. So, yeah, I think that's a really good example of listening to those employees.
And the challenge is, for all of us as owner-operators, and it's not all money-driven, but for me, part of it is I want to produce, yes, for money, but it's how I feel good about myself. But I have to recognize that's not necessarily their motivation.
Right.
In fact, it's probably not.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So for them, then there is some. They want to have a good income, of course, and they want to feel good about what they do.
Yeah.
But you're right. The younger generation really doesn't expect, like Melinda, to be with me for 20 years.
Right.
Because who would want to work for a guy that's 91?
Yeah, they see the writing on the wall. They're going, I'm getting 5 years in with this guy.
Yeah. They're waiting for a younger, more handsome guy than me, though.
Yeah,
That's their hope.
Like, he's close to retirement. I'm signing on right here.
Yeah. In fact, let's start giving him some suggestions.
Let's start making life miserable enough that he'll walk away. No, I do think that's an important point you bring up, is they don't necessarily come in with that loyalty mindset.
No.
I mean, they're not thinking, I'm settling down and this is where I'm going to be for the next 20 years. Yeah. They are more transient in nature, more curious into dipping their toes into other offices or other fields. And so I think sometimes, I know as Dr. Kuba has sat in that exact seat, she can be wounded by that. You know, why are you not as loyal to me as I am to you? And it's really not a personal thing. It's just a different mindset that this younger generation has. And we can't live and breathe by that, unfortunately.
I know I've had that. Funny that you should say that, but I've felt the same thing. That why don't they love me as much as I love them? Or do they know how much I love them? And so I think we all struggle with that. Yeah. And to try not to take it personally. You know, if they leave you, you're like, well, what?
Such an offense, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Do they not know?
I gave you my life.
Exactly. But it is a different working population. And it goes, without saying that we almost have to plan for that.
Oh, sure.
That becomes part of our management type strategy, is to know we're going to do ourselves a disservice if we plan on this person being with us for 20 years. Right. Because that's just likely not reality anymore.
But the hard part now is replacing those people. That's just... Now, I'm fortunate to be in a small town. Yeah. So we pay well enough that there aren't a lot of options for them to run to. So I have an advantage over your doctors that are in larger metro areas where they could go.
There's 20 offices down the street.
Yeah, yeah. So I do have an advantage there, and have 4 or 5 younger staff people, and they have been with me. I think the youngest is 2 years.
Yeah. Which is
pretty good at that age.
Yeah. It really is. And that it seems weird to say that, but that's a pretty good stretch for those younger employees. And every once in a while you'll find one that breaks the mold and really does have, staying power. But 2 years is pretty good for a younger person. So
one of the youngest ones, I think the one that I'm thinking about that's been there 2 years, we could tell she's getting a little restless. This attitude, come in the morning, I would say hi, and I wouldn't get a response, and I'm like, what the heck? Man. So for her, we've given her another responsibility. And if it succeeds, it's all on her. If it fails, it's all on her. So I think that's, it wasn't intentional to be a motivator for her, but I've found that in this particular case,
it motivates.
She kind of likes that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I feel like, too, and this ties back, we had a episode on, we called them Sour Patch employees. Just the ones that show up and they're just sour. They're not, something's going on. And sometimes that ebbs and flows with employees. You know, they've got bad days or bad months or whatever happens. But sometimes it is trying to figure out, like you did with this young lady, okay, she's going sour on me. You know, let's try something to kind of spice it up. And that responsibility apparently worked for her.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
So I've wondered now, is that true for all employees, that they need to have a place where you're just not part of the team, but maybe you have a place where you can shine?
Yeah.
That this is because I think we all want to feel great about ourselves. So you don't want to come to work and feel even less about yourself than you did when you left your stinking husband and those snotty kids. You know? So if we can provide a place where they really feel good about themselves. And so we've tried to provide education, you know, for our staff, but it's just always a challenge. Just always to know what's going on in their minds, and is it something outside the office that they bring into the office, or is it the office?
Who knows, right?
Again, because a lot of times I think I'm great, and
and then
apparently I'm not. Apparently I'm not.
And they let you know eventually.
No, I wish they would, because I could handle that.
Yeah.
You know, but no, it usually filters back to me, but it's not direct.
Yeah.
But that's me. That's part of it too. Is I think I'm so open. Surely, why can't you come to me?
But they don't.
But they won't.
Yeah.
Because I have that.
Yeah.
Pawpaw look.
We lovingly call it the pawpaw look. The glaring eyes.
Frown, yeah.
that indicate displeasure. No, but I do think that, you know, oftentimes what happens with this younger generation is rather than confront it, you know, they are dissatisfied in some way, that rather than go through the discomfort of confronting something, they would just assume move on. It's easier to just move on and start afresh somewhere else. And I think, you know, we could trace that back to a million different reasons, but I think one is just that loss of communication that started to happen, you know, 15 years ago with social media and really that taking root and replacing a lot of communication, that these people lost the art of how to relate with people and have conflict. And so I think, you know, we almost have to be so in tune to, like, she's showing up and she didn't say good morning, and that becomes a clue. We don't just kind of chalk that up to, oh, she's having a bad day. It's like, I should probably pay attention to that, because there's a pretty good chance that she's on her way out. Yeah,
really, I guess if I want to know if they like me, or just go to social media, see what my employees are saying about me.
It's so funny. The same client that sent me these questions for you, she sent me some screenshots of an office that she had worked with, and oh my goodness, this employee that's still there, that's still at the office, is just blowing up the team, and I'm coming for them, and just wait until tomorrow. And so you're like, oh no, it is. Go, if they friend you on social media, use it to your advantage, I guess.
So this staff member needs to go through a metal detector coming into work, right?
Protect yourselves. That's an open threat right there. So. Yes. Okay, so last question that I have for you is, what do you feel like over the years are some of the best things that you've done, you know, as a dentist or as an employer?
Well, I think as a dentist, when I think of my patients, the thing that got me in trouble with and got me fired from my uncle is he could not stand the fact that I was so friendly with my patients. So I might be walking down the hall, hugging them, or, you know, my arm around, and he would say, you know, that's driving me crazy. And I would say, I'm going to change, I promise. And after 3 years, he gave up on me, and I gave up too. Apparently not. That's not it. So I think for me, clinically, I think we're all about the same.
Right.
I think for me, it's been, I absolutely do love the patients.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the patients. I can't keep my hands off of them. I love...
In a good way.
In a good way. Just hugging them. we had a new patient the other day, and he said, "I love the laughter
Yes.
in your office because you can just
Sense the fun.
yeah, we just have fun. Even the patient, even the staff member that comes in
Grouchy.
disgruntled eventually gets happy during the day. So I think for me, if I've had any kind of impact on patients, it would be that they know this guy loved me and cared for me.
Yeah.
And I just want people to feel good about themselves, because I think there's so many people out there hurting emotionally, spiritually.
And if this can be a bright spot for them.
Yeah. I want them to leave feeling better about themselves. Because I think there was a little boy in the other day, and I asked, "How old are you?" And he's 14. And what grade are you in, 7th or 8th? He said, "Well, I'm in the 7th, but I should be in the 8th because I was held back." I didn't need to hear that story, but that tells you what's going on in his little mind.
Yeah.
So everybody comes in with some debris in their mind. And so, yes, I'm in dentistry, and I can help them with their dental needs, but I really want to help them just feel good about themselves for the day.
Yeah. And again, I would say that's one of the examples that I use a lot in talking with clients, is just that I feel like that's a mindset you had for whatever reason from the beginning. And part of that's probably the way that you're wired, but also just that genuine desire. Like, we are in dentistry, but we're also in the people business. I mean, we are working on people. We are developing those relationships with people. And that when, the age-old adage is, you can provide the crappiest dentistry, but if they like you, they're never going to complain, because they appreciate that feeling of being encouraged. And so I feel like that's one thing that you've really, valued over the years. And in part of the reason why I feel like you're both the first practice and the last practice have grown so much is that people want to go to a place where they feel cared for and loved, and they walk out feeling brighter than when they walked in. And I think that doesn't happen accidentally. That takes a lot of effort and a mental, mindset, and making sure that your team's on that same page, which is, another part of the battle, because you can't carry that all on your own. You got to make sure that team is, has that same mindset of, we're here to serve these patients. So.
I think we've been really fortunate with the team that we have now, that they're all, for instance, another little boy we found out he's late for his appointment because he's walking from high school to our office. So Melissa up front says, "Hey, can I borrow your car? I'm going to pick up this kid." So she went and picked up the kid, brought him to the office, took him back. So that's just kind of, I've got a good group of ladies around me
that just kind of naturally think about that. Which is good. And again, I think that's probably the culture that's been set.
Probably.
That that expectation of really taking care of the patient has been set, and then therefore they kind of rise to the challenge. Any final advice for, we've got all kinds of listeners all over the United States. We're really lucky to have some avid followers of us, and all in practice ownership at various stages. I've got, new ones that are just now starting to practice, and people that have been in it for a long time. Any final advice that you'd have for them?
Well, I think when I think back on my career, historically dentistry has been, you go out, you set up a practice alone, and everybody else is competition. Everybody else in town wants the same patients that you do. So you don't share a lot of ideas or concerns or fears with each other. So if I had it to do all over again, I would get help earlier. And that's part of our, I guess, the type of person dentistry draws. We are just independent.
Yes.
We want to succeed or not succeed on our own. So I think asking for help for many of us, at least for me, was, well, that's a sign of weakness. I'm not as strong or not as smart or whatever. So I think I would ask for help earlier, having another second set of eyes to look at my situation and say, this is how we can change it. It's not as hard as you think it's going to be.
Right.
So you can stay in this, either lack of production or a hostile environment that you're working in, or I can have help
and do something.
So I think that's the biggest thing I would change, and the biggest thing that I see with people is just
there's this isolation
that I don't want people to know I'm not making any money,
right,
or
that I'm dissatisfied,
or that I'm unhappy, and is it because I'm not making money, or is it because I chose the wrong career, or
right.
So I think everybody needs help, just like you did when Bethany was in college. She was my office manager and began seeing things, even as a young person, how to improve our practice.
Yeah. It's just a different perspective. And I think anytime you and that doesn't have to come in any particular way. That can come from, hey, I actually befriend the dentist down the street.
Right.
And that, yes, there is a level of he's my competition, but it also is a level of having somebody that is living the same life that you're living, is working with the same type of patients that you're working with, and just having a connection with somebody who is similar to you can sometimes be the person that you're able to go, what do you think about this idea? Or have you tried this? How did it work for you? And I do think that connection is so important. And I do think it's a reason that a lot of people burn out.
Oh, yeah.
Is there's just not that connection. Or they might talk to their spouse about it, but their spouse isn't in the field.
Right.
And they just can't see it from the way a dental professional sees it. And I would say that connection really shouldn't be social media. There's a lot of, dental Facebook groups and all of that. That's not the connection that we're talking about. I feel like it's the connection of somebody who's walking in your shoes and being able to have real conversations with them is super helpful.
Yeah, so I guess I like that. It's the courage to just pick up the phone and call, whether it be a classmate or maybe even someone that you admire. You know, there's so much focus today on mentor. Find a mentor. Find someone. And it just takes a lot of courage just to pick up the phone or write a letter. Pick up the phone, I think, would be it.
Yeah.
And say, I admire you from afar.
Right.
Could we have dinner?
Yes.
Let me take you to dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
And just start and just see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think to your point, that's not a sign of weakness. That is a sign of courage.
Oh, yeah.
And if that means that it lengthens, the way I always talk about the practice is, it's your best investment.
Oh, yeah.
And if it means that your body as a tool of dentistry can stay in the field longer and work happier and harder because you've got now a resource that kind of fuels you and inspires you, then it's totally worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's worth paying for dinner every time.
Exactly.
They'll love it because it's a free dinner, and you'll love it because you're motivated when you leave. So that's good advice. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thanks for being trapped in the closet with me today.
Love you.
Proud of you. Thanks.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone. But we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.